The future belongs to authors who are authorpreneurial or entrepreneurial. And with that, welcome to another Authorpreneur Secrets Live Masterclass. Today we're going to conclude our series on 14 lessons for entrepreneurship success by Javette Nixon from his book titled From the Margins. And so in our first session, we did 7 of the 14, and today we're going to deal with the second half of those lessons, which are my favorite, and every single one of them is useful, and I'm going to be actually just reading them to you, and let me know which one resonates with you the most. Trust me, these are principles you're going to have to go back to over and over and over again. It's motivational and it's practical. And so stay tuned. Masterclass is now in session. Okay, that's just for you to subscribe. But who am I? Let's do our usual intro.
Let's welcome C. Ruth Taylor. Her mission is to raise up 10,000 winning Caribbean entrepreneurs by 2030 to ensure fewer books die in the minds of their authors, that more manuscripts become published legacies, and precious lives are transformed with the turn of every page.
All right, so I see that our viewership is increasing for the live masterclass. We're up to about 30 pupils. And so we want that to go further. And as you heard, all of this is part of our educational campaign to raise up 10,000 authorpreneurs or author entrepreneurs by 2030. And to do that, I have an exciting event coming up from my publishing services company, Bamboo Sparks. It's our inaugural publishing summit and expo on April 5. That's Saturday, April 5 at the Technology Innovation Center. That's up by the University of Technology, and inviting you to be there. It's just an exciting day. And especially if you're a first-time author or you are already on the journey and you want to learn more about sales and marketing and audiobooks, we have some amazing presenters. Let me just show you the flyer, most of whom are females. And this month is International Women's Month, right? And look at our beautiful presenters. We have Dr. Sharma Taylor. We have some young ones in the building, under 13, their 20s. We have Damarley. We have Keth Joy. We have Daphne. We have Natalia. And so the workshops in the morning, those will be paid workshops. And you will get an opportunity to have a live consultation session with a publishing coach to discuss your book, whatever stages you are in the process. If you haven't started and you want to know what's next, because the number one question that I get each week is, how do I publish a book? What do I do next? Either persons haven't started or they're started and they don't know what to do next. And in the afternoon, we're having the expo. So we want to connect you to the solutions that you need to publish and market your best-selling book. So we're calling all authors, book lovers, and creatives. So the afternoon expo 2 to 4 will be open to the public. It's free. And we have a veteran educator, renowned comedian, and author himself, Owen Blacker Ellis, will host this. We're having a multi-author book launch as part of it. And we're having our publishing awards. So the Publisher of the Year will be presented, as well as the winners of our publishing um, two publishing prizes, a youth and a senior person over 50, right? So it's going to be fun and exciting, and we're going to connect you. Do you need a shipper? Do you need a printer? Do you need an editor? Do you need an audiobook producer? We're partnering with audio. We're partnering with Skyshore Shipping, and just come on out. Buy some books, get the connections and the solutions you need. All right. So that's all of 5 minutes on that. All right. So let's get into the lessons. Just a reminder in terms of who the author is. Javette Nixon is a serial entrepreneur, marketer, author, speaker, and investor. He's the founder and chairman and CEO of Seaforth Holding Limited, Point Global Marketing, and Esther Ventures Limited. And he wrote this book to pass on some lessons to upcoming entrepreneurs, to say that you can do it even if you start off small. And so let's get into the tips. Just reminding you that the name of the book is From the Margins. And the first 7 tips that were shared: the value of authenticity in story, telling and branding, provide excellent service, innovation by imitation, entrepreneurship by design, the need for permission, understanding branding, the value of personal leadership. And now we're going to go to the value of failure. Oh my goodness. How many of you like to fail? I sure don't. And this chapter really appealed to me when I was doing my refreshers course. So I've been writing a book on driving with confidence for about 2 years now, because I lost my confidence in driving in the very first year that I got my license. And because of that, I haven't remained around the steering wheel. And as I was seeking to get back in that frame of mind to drive with confidence, and I was struggling when I was doing my refreshers course about 2 years ago, shortly after this book was written, this lesson on the value of failure really helped me. So let's read it. It says, success equals multiple failures, but I think people forget that, or they don't know the formula. The number of times I have made mistakes in business is staggering. I have meetings with my team, and I come out of the meeting and I say to myself, Javette, you should have communicated better. You should have made the vision clearer. You should have supported a team member. This is just on a daily basis. And then you go bigger and you say, you could have cut costs there earlier. You should have made the decision earlier. You should have launched this product long ago. This is how constant it is. And the bigger you go, the more these failures will result in you losing money. And I can testify my failures have resulted in big money. And even in publishing, I was $1 million Jamaican dollars in debt after publishing my first book, and then the other books. And along the journey, I've made other mistakes. So I've lost, I've done my fair share of Jamaican $1 million mistakes on the journey. Along the way, there will be insulting people who may not like you or how you handle the matter. Boy, I can testify about that one too. So I don't know if I'm going to get through all of these in the half an hour, because everything this author says resonates. All right. So there will be people insulting you who may not like you or how you handle the matter. It comes with the territory. Now, that perspective helped me, because entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, right? Nevertheless, be willing to start from the bottom, work tirelessly, and remain. It is a grind, and the material gains will come much later, not initially. So he says, on your entrepreneurship journey, be patient. Nothing meaningful can be built like that. At least nothing that is built to last, right? So I'm reading, right? As Stephen Cromwell said, you cannot build something to last if you don't realize that you're going to have multiple failures and you're going to have to be seen starting at the bottom. And that is so true, because when I started in this publishing thing, I didn't know what I was doing. I remember when I was telling my publisher that I am going to publish on my own, I was shaking. Oh my goodness, I tried to keep my hands down, and trust me, it is nerve-wracking, but that's part of the process. But it comes with the territory. You're going to have some failures. So that is number 8. Let's look at number 9. Number 9 was also a big one, and that's the value of learning. All right, so I'm going to read what he says about that. One of the things that many people think is necessary in order to get to where they want to go is the notion of having all the resources up front. I tell you why I love this book, because many times we don't start on the journey because we don't have all the resources. And right now we're doing a project. When I started publishing, I wasn't working. I was unemployed, right? I didn't know where the money was coming from. When I set out to publish 20 books, or to have 20 published books for 2020, I didn't know where it was coming from. I start almost everything without money, without knowing. And I used to feel away, but now, according to what Nixon is saying, that's part of it. Many people, when they set out, they don't have the resources. That's why they have these Shark Tank and these grants and these pitches. I look at Canva. So many people turn down the creator of Canva, and know it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And so the value of learning, he says, I have this minimum resource requirement when it comes to starting something. And the minimum resource required is learning. So it is not cash, he says. It is learning. My gosh, this book can preach, right? So let me read some more. Learning is the only thing that is required at the start, because learning means progress. All right? I tell you, get this book, guys. Hi, Marcherie. All right, so as far as I'm concerned, and how I've always approached anything I do, this is what Nixon is saying. Even if it's an idea that came to me, it's immediately, how do I start learning? How do I give myself to it? How do I move from the knowledge that I have to the knowledge I need for the life I want to build for myself? What it means is that if you're passionate about it, you start before you are ready. Praise God. It's like he's preaching, because we often feel that we have to have everything in place before we jump. And he says you have to start before you're ready. Right now, this is ministering to me, you know? I love this book. The comfort zone, it means, because if you wait until you're ready, he says, it means you're still in your comfort zone. The comfort zone is something that is not pushing you to actually go somewhere and do something different. You're still in the ambit of what you can control. And then he says, everything dies in the comfort zone. I was like, what? And he says, everything. Learning is uncomfortable. If you've ever tried to learn to become a graphic artist or learn another language, if you're not naturally gifted in it, there is this phase that in the process that is so uncomfortable. You feel awkward. You feel like you don't know what you are doing. Can I get a witness? The same applies whether you are learning a dance move or anything new. You feel stupid. You're like, I don't feel comfortable. I feel outside my comfort zone. Invariably, what most people do is they take that feeling of being out of their comfort zone to say, I don't want to do it because I'm going to look stupid, or I'm not worthy of doing it. I don't have the skill set. He says, but the reality is You are learning. And the reason why you're uncomfortable is because you're learning. So he says you need to value learning. That's one of the lessons he learned on the journey, because even if it doesn't work out, you would have moved yourself to a different plane. You would have, as they call it in economics, gone to a different utility square. The utility theorists, they say everybody has these points on their consumption curve. It's about consumption, but I'm applying it creatively. So I'm not going to read everything, right? But I'm going to pick out some from this because he really spent some time on this point. He says, perhaps you've tutored, counseled, advised creatives, or many people coming up in the business, or starting other projects and trying to find their way. Have you noticed that there is this fear of learning? Why is there resistance to opening your eyes to something new and just grabbing it by the horns? Because we don't want to look stupid. We don't want shame, Javette. That's what it's about. The truth is, most people don't like to look like they're amateurs, right? Everybody wants to be an expert, but even the greatest experts were once amateurs. And I like what, the name just slipped me, but he says every master was once Harvey Ecker, T. Harvey Ecker, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. He says that every master was once a disaster. And that's another way to cement what Nixon is saying. Oftentimes in the development of business, we pretend to have mastery of our field. There's this feeling that I need to be an expert to start. I need to know all the answers to start, when in reality, nobody does. And even if you're an expert, you still have blind spots. Can I get an amen? You still have things that you have to learn. Unfortunately, many people only want the Instagram effect. Instagram essentially is a highlight reel. You don't see the missed shots. You don't see the stumbles. You don't see the failures or the falls. You only see the finished product of that shot made, that glamorous image. And that's what people desire. You don't even see the nuances in the story, only the highlights. In any career, you don't get most of the lessons from the highlights. I tell you, lessons for budding entrepreneurs, this book can preach. All right, the next big one, number 10, is that success is incremental. Don't forget it. So we have a saying in Jamaica, every mickle makes a muckle. All right. This is what many people don't realize. Even if you look at the most successful point in your life, when you think, oh, I've achieved something, it was not immediate. For example, a good one that people can relate to is education. People feel like, oh, the high point is my graduation day, or it is when I have hit this achievement that I need to post a picture to say, hey, I have a degree. But if you think about the process is incremental. So Nixon says, when you start on day one to do your degree or your program or whatever, on day two, you will know more than you knew on day one. At the point at which you graduate, and the point at which you graduate is not the point of maximum achievement. It's actually, for most people, the point of minimum achievement, because you just took one more step to get to that. You had a whole journey. It's like somebody saying that success is about the journey, not just the destination. In year two, you would have made friendships, right, and connections with people that may stay with you your whole life. In year three, you were introduced to a topic that gave you an idea for the business that you may start 10 years in the future. That's like me. I'm celebrating 10 years on my author journey as a published author. And what I'm studying now for my doctoral studies is because of what happened back then. So it's just amazing. I never knew when I started that what I was doing would help me get a doctoral degree. And that's what he's saying. So you don't just look at the end process, it's everything, it's the journey. You can't see the entire trajectory at the start. You can't see the entire timeline. So he says, therefore, many times we undervalue those in between spaces, when in reality, it's the in between, it's in the journey, the fullness of what you're actually supposed to be accomplishing happens. Wow. The graduation is just like a cherry on top. The cake is baked. The knowledge is already in the head. This is just something that says, hey, let's commemorate this moment. The in-between spaces are the most important, and people often want to run away from that. Even people that know better, because it is difficult. What point are we discussing? Success is incremental. You have to remember this on your author entrepreneur journey. Right? So when you're going through that process, he says people often complain, and he has this part in Jamaican patois. They says, Lord, me have to go write that document, yeah. Me have to go figure out this idea. Oh God, me have another idea in my head. Now me have to go edit this. Oh, me I go edit this. I mean, I know the tools fully. And me have to go learn that. Now me stressed. Me not seeing the full picture. Me don't know how this is going to work. Trust me, you can know when an author is writing from the heart and writing from experience, because he's putting the lessons learned on his 10-year journey in business, starting with just an idea. And I can relate to this. That's why I come back to these principles over and over. So that all of what I just said for the international audience, he says, oh Lord, now I'll have to write this document. Now I'll have to figure this out. Oh God, I have another idea. Now I'll have to edit this, and I don't know the tools fully. Now I have to figure this out. I'll have to learn this. And now I'm stressed. And now I'm not seeing how that is going to work. And right now I'm going through that process. It is so real. He says, never forget that it is in the in-between spaces where the real gravy happens. That's where development and success happens over time. Number 11, the value of discipline. And I saw a quote on Instagram with Warren Buffett. He says, you don't have to be the best or the smartest. You just have to be the most disciplined if you want to become successful. So I think it's E.T. Eric Thomas. He says, you just have to outwork them. Right? So they may be better at it, but if you are willing to outwork them, then you will win big very often. All right? So here is how Nixon breaks that down. I think I'll finish all 14 because I'm not going to read the whole thing. You need to get the book. All right? He says, whether you're a creative or a creative entrepreneur or just someone who is looking to try and find the next step, remember, discipline wins races that motivation will never win. This is something I've always taken to heart, because most of us want to be motivated. We want to feel that we have the fire in our belly to do something we have a passion for, right? The reality is motivation can only get you up, but discipline make you stay up. So if you're doing anything of purpose, if you're doing anything that is meaningful, it's not an overnight story. And that's why in my book, When Trees Talk, I say strong trees don't grow overnight. So we often hear, oh, this is the youngest person to ever do that. This is what we often call an outlier. It is an externality. It's an aberration. It's not the typical story. The typical story is one of constant discipline and work, right? So he says success is about a commitment to change first. Realize that motivation alone is not going to make you win the race. Motivation will get you out of bed, but it is discipline that will sustain you. Motivation is profits you stand to make if you land a lucrative business deal. Discipline is the months of arduous work that must go into formulating the 30 minutes business pitch to win that contract. And now we are on to lesson number 12. So 2 more to go after this. Lesson number 12 is about the need for change. Jim Rohn would say that if you don't like where you are at, he says, you're not a tree, you can move. And the reality is that to get to the next level, you have to become another version of yourself. For things to change, you have to change. So that's what Nixon is saying. I'm not going to break this down a lot, but if you're in a lull, the first thing you need to figure out is, what do you need to change? After you figure out what you need to change, you figure out if these habits are actually things that can sustain you. So what you need to do is to make small adjustments, create habits that you can actually sustain. All right. I think that one is self-explanatory. But I want to read this part that he says a friend of his told him in the early stages of his business. So he says, I have a good friend, Dwight Campbell, who has been my friend since I was in high school. The one thing Dwight always says to me, even back then, is, Javette, if you can't change your mind, you can't change anything. And he says that has always stayed with him. In other words, if you can't change your own mind about something, if you can't convince yourself to spend some time working on yourself, why do you want to convince somebody else and try to convince them to even give you the money for it? So do you know the first person you try to convince when you have a new project? You need to convince yourself. And then he says, this is going to require some discipline. It's going to require change. Are you willing to make the change? Then this one now, this one was a huge one. Because sometimes we're ashamed of our past, our mistakes, our failures. Things have not always gone well for all of us. All of us have a past, right? Sometimes we have a quirk. Sometimes there is something about us that we may not even like. And it is in the embracing of this that sometimes we find success. So he talks about stepping into your ownness, quote unquote. That should be in quote, right? I like this because I remember Made Away, Travis Green. He had an accident or something that he bit his tongue. And so when he talks a little bit funny. But he said when he went for the record deal, it was because of that quote-unquote speech impediment that made him stand out and why they signed the deal with him. And so sometimes the little quirk and the thing that you dismiss is the very thing that will set you apart and give you success. So stepping into your ownness. Let me read what he says. Not everyone will become an influencer. And there are other ways to do business. You might find that your personality and style are more reserved. You may prefer a more curated clientele where you have a handful of people for whom you create. Perhaps an exclusive, expensive niche market suits your business. It was Lindsay Samuel who wrote on my page the phrase, stepping into your ownness. I love that. Yes, you have to step into your ownness. Some of us are stepping into otherness and trying to be like other people with 10,000 followers and 1 million likes. Some of you are trying to create this business that is trending. He says, how temporary. Why not examine your 1,000 followers closely? You may realize that you have more value and longevity there. And that is the truth, because comparison will stop you from doing what you know you ought to do. When you're comparing yourself, there will always be other people who will outshine you, prettier, smarter, can advertise better, can publish the book better, can sell more books. But what is it that you can do? Focus on that. Own it. Nobody can reproduce you. And so this is something that has helped me. For example, Sunday gone, I preached about finding and your voice and using it. That's exactly what Nixon is talking about. John the Baptist, for example, he knew that Jesus was better than him. And he introduced people to Jesus. He was content to settle in the role that he had. And that really spoke to me. Stepping into your ownness, what makes you different. Stop looking at the competition, who's selling more, and let that discourage you. He's saying, step into your ownness instead of otherness, and build that. There are persons who are making millions with a small YouTube channel. Graham Cochran shared the story of one of his clients called Aiko. I think she has maybe less than 500 followers, or she has just maybe about 300 or less than 1,000 people on her email list, and she's making 6 figures in US dollars. You have to step into your ownness and not follow the crowd. We're at the 30 minutes mark. The final one, he says, is focus on the things that you can control. So let me big that up. And at the time when this book came out, we were still in the pandemic. So he used that as an example. He said, for example, the rates of depression and anxiety went up. Several persons felt displaced as businesses closed, others downsized. Pandemic deaths and pandemic-associated deaths soared into the millions. Children were being orphaned, and most importantly, millions embraced virtual spaces for social interaction and entertainment. It was tough mentally, but it created a big shift in people's psychological well-being. On the other hand, let me read what he says. The control of a pandemic is out of most of our hands in a direct way. If you're a doctor or medical researcher, perhaps some of it is in your control. But for most of us, he says, there's not much we can do beyond following the protocols provided by the health officials. On the other hand, what we can do is that which is within our control, is to pursue our purpose with absolute vigor. Hanging on to every word from the press conference, that kind of thing, he says, will create fear and is crippling. So you ask yourself, how can you improve yourself, your environment, and your fellow citizens in the world? So he is basically saying that when you are working on your business and some things, don't stress over the things that you can't control. And right now, that is speaking to me. What is it that I can control? Focus on that. So we've come to the end. 14 lessons for entrepreneurship success from using the book From the Margins by Javette Nixon. And I encourage you to go get this book, right? And find out more about how you can create a global impact as an emerging business from the Caribbean or elsewhere. So in this book, he says he sought to provide a context for the individual's entrepreneurial development in the Caribbean. We've tackled the systemic issues present in the Caribbean. We've introduced lessons to teach you how to navigate entrepreneurship through a framework based on results. The hope is that these lessons will be a tool for inspiration and guidance on your entrepreneurial journey. Point Global, he says, you will have some false starts, but you can rebound if you reclaim your vision and follow the roadmap given in this book. And he says, let us know which of these lessons resonate well with you by emailing marginbook@javettnixon.com. So which of these lessons resonated with you the most? For me, it was, I think, the value of failure. I think that perhaps was the biggest one, the value of failure or learning from failure. Success is incremental and stepping into your ownness. All right. So if you're going to be a successful author entrepreneur, you have to read books. You you have to study those who are doing well, because success leaves clues. And so I trust that this 2-week masterclass from this book, From the Margins, has helped you. Remember, of making many books, there is no end. So go pen it to win it and dominate entrepreneurship. Ta for now. Until next time. Bye. Thanks for joining live, Marcherie.